Hey everybody, and welcome back to another MyJS story. This week we're talking to Max Stoiber. Max, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Max. I'm a front-end developer, JavaScript developer from Vienna, Austria, in Europe. I work at a company called Thinkmill, which is based in Australia, which is not Austria. That's a totally different country. So I work for a company called Thinkmill based in Sydney, Australia, where I work as an open source developer and do all sorts of JavaScript open source stuff, basically.
Awesome. We also recently had you on JavaScript Jabber.
Yes, exactly.
I don't have the exact episode number in front of me, so I guess I have to double check, make sure that it's been released. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll put it in the notes, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so I've been inviting all of the guests from JavaScript Jabber onto the show so we can talk about who you are and tell your story, which is kind of the deal that I'm excited about. So let's go ahead and get started with the first question, and that is, how did you get started programming? This episode is sponsored by Newbie RemoteConf. Newbie RemoteConf is a 2-day completely virtual conference hosted by none other than Charles Max Wood. If travel expenses are an issue or you just can't afford to be away from home for 2 days, then join us. It's virtual. This conference is focused on people who are new to programming who want to learn what the pros know, or just get a leg up in getting a job and getting into the programming community. We'll have speakers from all over the programming community to help you stay current, and a Slack room where you can connect with speakers and other attendees in real time. We'll also have a live roundtable video chat for attendees and speakers, plus we'll provide the talk recordings to you within days of the conference. Early bird tickets are available for $150 until May 12th, and the call for proposals is open until April 28th. So come join us at newbieremoteconf.com.
So I started programming in school, I think, because I was playing Minecraft and wanted to run my own server for myself and my friends. And to run a server, you sort of have to have a server. But then since I already had the server, I thought I should also have a website so other people could find my Minecraft server and could play with me and my friends. And I put together some really horrible HTML and then gave up pretty quickly. I don't think that site ever saw the light of day. And then in school, we had this school website, and every pupil had to sort of in the IT class create sort of a personal website for themselves, like inside the school website. So we had this sort of limited sandbox environment where everybody would sort of learn HTML from a teacher and then try to build something and hack something together. And it had like a guest book and everything. It was really advanced. So I created that personal website and had a lot of fun with that, doing lots of blinking things and inputting some random gifs I found somewhere on the internet. And that was, I think, really the first time I ever programmed anything at all. And I really enjoyed it. I probably spent weeks tweaking that personal website, adjusting the content, adjusting the font, adjusting everything, the colors. Like I played around with it a lot, and sort of gone to IT over sort of games and school, and then took some classes in school like shell programming and an introduction to Java, where I didn't really. I did I programmed some very basic control flows, but I wouldn't really say I programmed. In the sense that there wasn't, well, I guess I did program, but I didn't make anything useful. And then in Austria, when you graduate high school, you have to write this 40-page paper about a topic of your choice. It's not really a thesis because you don't prove anything. It's not very scientific. It's just write 40 pages about some topic you care about. And for some reason that I can't remember now, I wrote about TCP/IP, about network protocols, which is one of the most boring topics you could imagine.
Yes.
It is super dry. Like it's totally, like the paper was probably the most boring paper out of all of them, I assume, because it was horrible. But I had this sort of 40-page paper about TCP/IP, but I'd never actually used it. Like I had all of this knowledge, but I've never actually done with it. And I thought, okay, so what's the most basic, or one of the most basic usages of the network, right? Of networks. What can you do with them? And I thought about, I could set up my own router, or I could set up my own switch at home or something. But that doesn't seem very appealing. And so I thought, well, websites, the internet is a big network. I could try making a website, like setting up a web server and trying to make something that people can actually access on the internet. And got my first server. And then I had a server and had to put something there. So I started again doing some HTML. And since then, basically haven't stopped tweaking my personal webpage. It went from a very simple HTML and CSS page to a WordPress installation with lots of PHP magic and third-party themes. And then, since then, I've basically been on this track of wanting to become a front-end programmer. That's really what set me off in that direction.
That's really interesting. So it's funny because I remember playing with some of the same things. Like, it just gave me these flashbacks to building websites on like GeoCities or AngelFire or something way back in the day. And
yeah.
And then you get it.
I wonder how many people got into programming because of GeoCities and Neopets. Neopets is the other big one, right?
I never did Neopets, so
I've heard from a lot of people that they started programming because of that site, and the same thing for GeoCities. So these two sites have probably fostered a whole generation of programmers, which is weird when you think about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I said, I never did anything with Neopets, so I don't know anything about it. But I know plenty of people who got started with something like GeoCities or AngelFire, where they just started building stuff in HTML, and then they found some back-end system or PHP that would effectively modify their HTML, and they just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do I dare ask how long ago this was? I mean, you'd be showing your age.
Yeah, so I just turned 20, so this was 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm a little older than 20, so when I was doing it, it was quite a bit longer ago than that. But,
yeah, it wasn't. So yeah, I haven't actually been doing this for very long. People sometimes see me or come up to me at conferences, for example, when I speak, and ask me, I'm a youngster. I'm really new to the industry. I'm now 21 years old. Like, what, like, as a sort of seasoned veteran, what should I do? And I feel really weird because I'm younger than them. Like, it's super weird. And then I tell them, yeah, sorry, I'm not actually older than you. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I can't really give you any tips, but just do stuff you enjoy, I guess.
Nice. So for being not so old, it seems like you've made some pretty interesting contributions to JavaScript and React. So I was wondering, how did you go from kind of fiddling around with HTML and talking about networking protocols in a high school, not thesis, to JavaScript? How did you make that leap?
So I continued doing HTML and CSS for so I thought, okay, this whole HTML CSS thing is obviously I really enjoyed doing this. I really enjoyed programming. So I thought, okay, I'll study computer science. I'll go to the technical university in Vienna, and I'll study computer science and then become a programmer. And next to the so I started my course after finishing sort of high school and then after the summer break. And I started the course, and on the side still did some front-end development for my mother or some friends of my family. So just some really basic sites. And after probably 3 months of studying computer science, I didn't really do much for the course anymore, because it didn't really have anything to do with what I really enjoyed doing, which is front-end development. It was this sort of, we had to do, so the one actual programming course I had, which was an introduction to Java, I really enjoyed. I totally aced that. I went I was super good at that. But there were a ton of courses that just didn't interest me at all. And it made it really hard for me to focus on them because I was sitting at my PC and sort of, sketching out a database schematic for some homework I had to do. But really, I was thinking about and wanted to code HTML and CSS, right? I wanted to make another website. I had some ideas of things I wanted to try, right? And so I'd always end up getting sidetracked and basically procrastinating on my coursework by doing front-end development. And after 3 months or so of studying computer science, I just said, okay, I'm giving up. Like it's obviously not working. This is obviously not what I want to do. And thankfully got an internship at a company in London called Animate, which is they're like a super interesting company because half of the company is animators who make like TV animations, like ads and stuff. And the other half of the company is an agency, a digital agency who make products for like all sorts of companies and websites. And so I joined them as a front-end development intern and spent 3 months in London, which was super interesting and really got me into doing actual front-end development, not just some very basic, personal sites, but like building actual systems that are meant to last for big companies. And I learned more about HTML and CSS and then eventually jQuery and JavaScript. And after like 2 months, my mentors there, Simon and James, went, well, Max, so you've been learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for like 2 months now, and you've been doing really well. And we don't really know what we want to teach you now. Like, what would you be interested in? I said, I don't really know. What's like the coolest topic I could go into? I wanted to get better at JavaScript, but I didn't really know what that meant. And they said, well, so we have a project coming up which will require some dynamic interfaces, and we've been thinking about using this new framework library thingy that came out very, very recently by Facebook called React.js. What do you think about just diving into that for a few weeks and just like playing around with it, building something small and figuring out if it's actually like useful or nice? And I said, yeah, sure. And dove into the React documentation and back then the Flux documentation, and built like a tiny little app with it. And for the first time, really used JavaScript to build something. And I built that studio. It sort of ended up being a studio side project, which was released. And that's what really got me into the whole JavaScript React thing. And after I finished that internship, I built another project for myself called sharingbuttons.io, which is a website that you can go to and you can generate social media sharing buttons that don't track you, or don't track your users, basically. And since it's just static HTML and CSS. And I built that with React because I wanted to show a live preview of what those buttons would actually look like on your website, and all that sort of thing. And there were tons of options, and I built that with React. And as I was starting to build that, I sort of realized, hey, I'm doing the exact same thing I did for the last React project all over again. Like I'm doing the exact same setup. I'm creating the exact same folders. I'm setting up Grunt again. Like it's all the exact same. I should save that somewhere. So I copy and pasted that initial setup to another folder to sort of use it for my next project. But then I thought, well, if I just have it in another folder, I'm going to end up destroying it. Should probably version control it, which I had also learned during the internship. And so I used Git to start version controlling it. And then I thought, well, so I have it on my local machine, but it would be cool if I had a new machine, if I could really easily get it. So I pushed it up to GitHub and called it React Boilerplate. And that's basically where my whole open source journey started. That was 2 years ago now, I think. And now React Boilerplate has almost 12,000 stars on GitHub and is used at companies literally all around the world. Ranging from some of the biggest ones to tiny ones everywhere, which is absolutely incredible to think about. And so it all basically started with that internship, and then them tell me that I should trial this new thing called React.js.
Yeah, React is it's kind of interesting, how you get into, okay, I went and worked for this company and they were kind of teaching me the JS ropes, and then and this is a story I hear a lot where people, they get in, they get started, they get a job, and they have some sort of mentorship at the job that they're at. And they grow and grow and grow to the point where they either wind up leaving the company, or eventually they get to the point where the people who are mentoring them, it's like, well, I don't know what else to teach you directly, but there's this really cool thing to go check out.
Yeah, which is great. Honestly,
yeah.
I really love the people there.
So let me ask you really quickly, how important do you think it is then for people at the beginning of their career to have that kind of a mentorship?
I think it's really important because when you learn on your own, you can certainly learn. The good thing about the web is that you can learn a lot of things by yourself by just doing view source and figuring out what are other people doing and reading tutorials and blog posts. But there is a certain amount of professionality and intimate knowledge of really assessing the entire big picture that you sort of lose that way, because you don't know what, like, when you work in a company, you have to think about so many things. Like, you have to think about accessibility, right? Which is a thing that I never thought about before I actually did like work for people. I thought, well, what is that even? Like, how do I make something accessible? But it's really important. And there's all these tiny details that you sort of lose when you don't work with people that teach you these tiny details and then make sure you take care of them. And so I think it's hugely important to get started by, having people around you that, look at what you do and figure out how it could be better and sort of show you the ropes.
Do you have a story or some other example of what, an instance where somebody was able to mentor you through something or help you through something that paid off later on?
Yeah, I have a good friend now who is called Nick Graf. And he's one of the original organizers of the React Vienna meetup. And I met him there, or actually I think I met him at the Vienna JS meetup. Anyhow, and so I met him for the first time giving a talk. I think I gave a talk about, I think it was Vienna JS, and I gave a talk about post-CSS, and he gave a talk about React Redux, if I remember correctly. And it was my first meetup talk, actually. And we sort of started chatting afterwards about how he was using React in his projects and how I was using React in my projects. And he basically really, really encouraged me to go apply to speak at conferences. And I didn't think anybody would accept me to speak at any conference, right? I thought I don't really have anything to say. I'm quite happy with having spoken in a meetup. I don't want to like overshoot and like get really discouraged. But he said, no, like, you submit some CFPs. They'd love to hear about what you have to say. Like, you've been doing great work with React Boilerplate and stuff. Just like submit a bunch of CFPs, and really encouraged me to get started with conference speaking. And so I submitted a bunch of CFPs, and then last year I spoke at 16 conferences in front of thousands of people, basically. Yeah. So that totally would not have happened if Nick had not gave me basically a kick in the ass. I'm sorry for the language, and told me to go do that, because I would have never thought that's a thing that you can just do. But really, you can. Like, everybody, if you build things for the web, you have things to say. Everything we do has an opinion, and everything we do has decisions in them that we make for a reason and another. And it's super interesting to listen to why people do certain things versus other things. What I'm trying to say is that no matter in which stage in your career you're at, or how much you think you have to say, you have things to say, and you should submit papers to conferences, and you will get accepted, and you will speak at conferences. It's not just something that very famous people do. It's like, you can do it. It's not hard. Like, you have things to say, and you can do it.
I totally agree. And it's funny because, like, I remember when I was brand new programmer, and, I wasn't very courageous either. And somebody said, you should do a lightning talk. I was at a conference that did lightning talks, which are just 5-minute talks, and you sign up while you're at the conference. And it was just funny because it just worked. I got up and I did it. I had people come up afterward and say that was really interesting. And, at first I thought they were being nice, but then they asked me some deeper questions that really made me realize, what I talked about was something that they needed to hear one way or the other. And so it totally made a ton of sense. I'm also going to take a second here to encourage anybody who's thinking about these kinds of opportunities. Submit a talk to Angular Remote Conf and React Remote Conf, which are coming up this fall. And as a conference organizer, I can tell you that I like getting
2, 3, sometimes 4. I think the conferences have like 16 spots, and so I like getting new speakers in for, a half to a quarter of those spots. And usually I'm picking them based on the content, but I usually do try and, get that kind of a split on the talks, because you get this brand new perspective from this new person who's come into the community from a different place. And it makes a big difference just being able to hear, oh, well, I was new and this is what I ran into when I was starting to do whatever it is that we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. It's also, if any of the listeners want to get into conference speaking, it's a very good idea to go to local meetups first. Mm-hmm. I got really lucky because Vienna JS is a great meetup and actually records all of their talks.
Oh, awesome.
So even before I started even before I started going to conferences, I already had a recorded video of myself talking, which is, I think, something that conference organizers really like, because they sort of see that you're not an incoherent, rambling person, and you aren't if you're listening to this. And it just sort of gives off an impression of how well you can speak, and it's super important, I think. But maybe you agree or disagree as a conference organizer.
I definitely agree. I usually don't watch too much of the video, but it does give me an idea of what your talk's going to look like when you give it, because I can see your body language, and I can see how you organize your thoughts and things like that. And that gives me an idea, okay, when I'm selecting this talk, it's going to be this topic, but it's also going to be this speaker.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned React Boilerplate. What are you working on these days that people would recognize you for, maybe in addition to React Boilerplate?
So nowadays, I made a thing called Carte Blanche, which was mildly successful, but sadly has now died a bit because I don't have the time to maintain it. And then I'm mostly focusing on Keystone.js, which is a Node.js content management system, Styled Components, which is a new way to style React applications and components. And I very recently released a thing called Microanalytics, which is a super simple but very flexible Node.js analytics service that's on GitHub, and you can just download and use for your own good. Yeah. So those are sort of, I think that those are the things that people know me the most for. It's interesting because the more time I spend in the open source community and in the general front-end community, the more ideas for projects I get, and the more I sort of, the more I want to do even more open source, if you know what I mean. Uh-huh. In the sense that I see, like, the more you work with the web, the more you realize some things that you're missing, and the more you want to fix those things. And you do it, like, as developers. I think developers have this inborn tendency of fixing their own problems, because all we do all day long is fixing bugs and solving our own problems. And it is super valuable to go in and find a problem that you solved and generalizing it and just pushing it up to GitHub and seeing if people, like, some other people might want to use it, and if nobody uses it, you haven't lost anything. Like, you've still solved your own problem. Yeah. And if maybe, probably actually somebody will have the same problem sometime down the line and will really appreciate that you've shared your solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
The same thing goes for blogging, I guess. Blogging is sort of in a similar vein, where writing down your thoughts about something, about some problem that you've had and solved somehow, or how you approach a project or anything really, is hugely valuable. Even if you think that nobody will read it, somebody will find it through some obscure search engine, and it will basically make their day, even if you think that it won't. But blogging is one of those things where it's really hard, because you have to put your own decisions into words and your own thoughts into words. I struggle hugely with blogging. It takes me ages to get anything on paper. But when I've done it, I'm really glad I've done it, because it not only does it help other people, but it also organizes my own brain. Like, I sort of see my brain connecting the synapses and sort of going, oh yeah, this belongs there, and that, oh yeah, and this is, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey there, this is Charles Max Wood, and I just wanted to talk to you really briefly about Freelance Remote Conf.
I'm putting on a conference for people who want to go freelance or who are freelance, and bringing in some of the experts from the Freelancer Show to talk to you about how to find clients, how to collect money, how to build your business, how to specialize, and much, much more. So if you're thinking about going freelance, or you're already freelance and want to hear from the experts on how to go, become, or grow your freelancing business, then by all means, come check us out at freelanceremoteconf.com. All right, well, we're kind of running out of time. I have another appointment here in about 5 minutes, so I'm going to push us over into the last part of the call, and that is picks. Now, you've been on the show before, so you understand picks. Do you have some things you want to shout out about?
So I'm going to do my first shout out about something very much in my own interest, which is that I today released an article on Smashing Magazine about styled components and why it is the way it is. So if you use React, go to smashingmag.com and check out that article. It took me quite a while to write. It's one of those articles where it was like, what is happening? How am I ever going to put my thoughts into thoughts? Then there's another shout out that I want to give, which is that the Babel.js is a tool to transpile your JavaScript, which a lot of people use. Literally millions of developers use Babel. And they're looking to release the next major version of it, and they need help. They're looking for contributors to help them fix some issues and try it out and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to link that down in the show notes. If you're into JavaScript and you want to get started in open source, you want to contribute to the first open source project of yours, this is a very good start. And that's basically it.
All right, very cool. I'm going to go ahead and throw a few picks out. I think I've mentioned on previous episodes that I went to CES. As we're recording this, it was about a week ago. But as this is released, it was a few months ago. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. And one of the things that I saw there that I wound up picking up was an autonomous desk. Autonomous is the brand. And effectively, it's a sit-stand desk with a motor in it. And I am currently cleaning out my current office so that I can move those in. My wife's a little tired of the boxes sitting in our front room, so I'm really excited about those. So I'm going to shout out about that. One other thing that I'm going to pick, and I may have done this in the last episode, but I got a portable battery. It's called GoPuck, and it's a little bit bigger than your normal battery. But anyway, it comes with this clip that you can use to attach it to your belt or the strap on your bag or anything else. It's a little bit different from what you're imagining. It has these little fingers on both ends of it, and so it kind of clicks around it. It's kind of hard to explain, but at least without seeing it. But if you go check it out at gopuck.com, I think is their address, you can kind of get the idea. But anyway, so it has this. It's basically a separate piece that clips around the battery. But yeah. But anyway, so you put it.
Sounds super weird.
Yeah, so I slide it onto my belt, and then I snap the battery into it.
All right.
So anyway, it was nice because then I didn't have to carry it around or have this big bulky thing in my pocket or anything. So. Yeah, GoPuck, definitely a cool tool there. So anyway, those are my picks. If people want to see what you're working on these days, Max, what do they do?
They go to Twitter. That's the main, or GitHub, I guess. But Twitter is where I spend most of my day, actually. https://twitter.com/mxstdr, which sounds complicated, but it's just my name without vowels.
All right. We will put links to all of that in the show notes. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We will go ahead and wrap this one up, and we will come back at you next week. I think next week we're talking to Rebecca Turner from NPM, so should be fun.
Nice.
All right. Thanks again, Max.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.